And we are live for the First Strike podcast. This is Detective Carr on the case on the First Strike podcast with Derek, Andy, and Elliot. Sweet cast just after Worlds. And we will get straight to it. No weird intros or anything. Let's go straight to Worlds. Javier Dominguez ended up taking down the event. And but let's talk about the event itself first. Elliot, I heard that you caught most of it. I saw some of it. I saw some of the top four, but you saw most of it across the weekend?
Yeah, I watched a bit of the day one draft while I was at work. Granted, not paying too much attention, but Dominaria Limited, always sweet. Paid most attention to the constructed, which is like, it was kind of lame seeing a bunch of black red mirrors a bunch of times in a row, but like, there was some variety. We got to see some turbo fog action. We got to see, that mono blue deck, which is really sweet to see. I really wish that we could explore it further, but end of the standard format, can't see too much more of it. I thought the whole tournament was sweet though. It was like super well produced, which is something that like hasn't been the case in the past. They had new music, tons of animations and slides. I thought it was a success, all things considered.
So I only caught the top four where they started introducing Greg and Ben Stark, and then they had this almost, I guess, WWE esports type entrance. Was it the same feel throughout the weekend, or was it just the top four?
Well, throughout the whole weekend, they had like a ton of really high production quality stuff in terms of like the transitions. They had like, as I said, new music going on the entire time. It just felt very professional, which is not something that can be said certainly of like the Grand Prix production. Maybe Pro Tours are getting a little closer to what we saw, but like this was just the next level. Like all of the like cuts in between where they were doing deck techs and talking to players seemed like really well produced. They like had everything, no hiccups. Sometimes during the Pro Tour we see like skip ahead a slide during a deck tech, all that sort of stuff. There was just everything went smoothly, which is pretty sad that that's where my bar is. But the way that Magic content is, it was great.
Yeah, I saw it was not only the crazy entrance, all the text that they would put up, and all the how they would cut between different scenes was really different. It felt significantly different than previous times. Derek, did you catch much of the event outside of just knowing that you were right about the standard format?
Yeah, I watched the majority of it. I basically watched it all. I stayed at home. And I agree with Elliot that it was sort of the next level, but I really disagree that it was done well. I actually think that they botched it, considering that this was their first showing of their new, like, sort of professional look at the way they do, I guess, higher level events from now on. That's what I assume that's what they're going to do from now on. They just screwed up a lot of things, I think. They tried to show the Enter the Battlefield about Luis Salvato, and there was a huge technical problem. The audio wasn't connected properly. It sounded like a robot, like the voice was doubling, and it wouldn't run. And they like tried to premiere and it didn't work. And then there was a couple other things too. I think they tried to click to Maria, is her name, a couple times, and her audio wasn't plugged in properly, or it was picking up something else, and it was just like pretty bad. Like specifically when they have the Enter the Battlefield thing, and I think it's very important for their brand that they have like a documentary series on these players, and then the first time they show it, it just doesn't work at all. And it's supposed to be like at least a 5-minute segment. To me, it seemed very choppy, specifically for Worlds. They also didn't promote it. They didn't really. It didn't seem to me like there was enough information on the players. It just wasn't good enough, not to mention the other things that I'm sure we can bring up later in the cast. But it seemed to me like a lot more work could have been done, and it was still better than their last broadcasts, which is like, if you didn't watch it and you haven't watched past ones, it sounds unbelievable, but trust me, it is very believable.
So
Yeah, I do. Sorry, I do agree that it wasn't perfect, but I think it was a step up. Like the interviews with players they held in between rounds at the news desk. It wasn't a sweaty player just after finishing his round. It was, they had well thought out questions. They had everything set up, and I thought it was like, in terms of a total broadcast experience. Yes, it had its hiccups. Were there less hiccups than normal? Maybe, maybe not. But the overall production quality, I think, was like a huge step up. And I think that continuing along this trend, the coverage of Magic in the future could be very good.
I don't know. I'm just not sold on the whole idea of like, oh, they did a okay job this time, they get away with one. It's like, nah, they've been doing a bad job for so long. They do a mediocre job this time and do something that's actually kind of cool, like having Mengucci in the booth for a bit and having some other well-spoken players in the booth for a bit. That was refreshing. It was nice to hear their opinion and have a personal connection with Mengucci. The one thing I did not like was when they did the questions with Huey and Carlos Ramao, and they were asking them like very personal questions about their team and stuff. And they asked Huey who's the tallest player, and then they asked Ramao who the widest player is. And I'm a very small individual, so that sort of thing doesn't affect me at all. But I could very easily see how that could come off very abrasive and just a very poor undertone of the whole thing, especially at the World Championships. I get it was supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, and Carlos Ramao is a very bubbly individual. Seems to me like he took it very well, but I just can't get behind that sort of sentiment, even if it was supposed to be a joke in a very professional area. So I just think there's so many things that I could go on and on about. I would have to rewatch it, though.
I wonder when they shot like I said, I only ended up watching the finals. Because they did a quick Ben Stark video that had to have been put together. I felt like it couldn't have been put together before the event, like right before the top four. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Elliot, where he talks about his road there, how excited he is to play against the best players and stuff. Okay, I guess maybe I have to go back to see if he said anything that was not generic, but I thought that was a really good intro clip. And but still lots of things to improve. I think ultimately that's what Derek is saying, but a significant step up overall, I guess. No, somewhere in between. I thought, from what I saw, I thought that the production was a cut above. But again, I didn't see the whole thing, and I'll take Derek's word that there's still a lot of work to be done. So what do you think about the ultimate winner, the final deck list, the red-black aggro? It was disappointing to see, like, when I watched, like, my first match was Ben Stark losing in 3, where in the game 1 and game 3, he was stuck on one land because he decided to keep a one-lander. Because that mono red deck has a lot of low drops, so it can work off of 2 lands very easily. But he never really drew his second land until much later, so he got crushed game 1 and game 3. It was really easy. And I don't think game 2 he had much of a strong draw either. So that was anticlimactic and disappointing for me. But yeah. What do you think about the standard configuration? Was there any surprise, any like one-ofs that surprised you, Derek?
I was very surprised at how, in my opinion, how poorly some of the decks were built. Not only did Ben Stark bring an unplayable to the event, he somehow top forward with it. For that to happen, I think you have to run pretty hot, and it showed in the top 4. Like, of course, he did miss his second land, but games 1 and 3 he kept a one-lander. How many one-landers can you keep in an event and expect to get there? Like, come on, man. Like, I get that you're good at draft, but like, what's going on? Like, it blew me away. Even if he hit his second land, he probably is still just dead to Gregor's, and like it's not even close, right? His deck is like unplayable in a completely red back field. I don't know how he would ever beat blue-white gift. His deck just doesn't have a fast enough clock if your opponent has it on turn 4, and you have to have the abrade, and you don't have any like discard spells post board. Not to mention that I think that Javier and Gregor's deck, just their sideboard wasn't built correctly. It seemed to me like having Karn in your sideboard was really loose, and having the Eldest Reborn was also trash. Of course, the Eldest Reborn was pretty good against, or pretty good for Javier game 4. But if you watch game 3, he has 5 mana and doesn't play the Eldest Reborn that's been rotting in his hand since his opener for multiple turns, and it just doesn't do anything. To me, if you're playing Eldest Reborn against a deck with Scrappy, Scrounger, Rekindling Phoenix, when do you ever expect to resolve this card? So that just means you have every single removal spell you play up to that point has to be perfect. So not only do you have to run extremely hot, but then you also have to get rid of a problematic creature that you wouldn't be able to get rid of otherwise. And on the third mode, you have to get back a card that you would impact the game and that you couldn't just replace with the Eldest Reborn in the first place. So what I'm saying is, like, if the Eldest Reborn was a Chandra, would it just be better than having a Chandra in play on turn 4 or on turn 5 or for multiple turns? To me, like, bringing in the Eldest Reborn against a Scrap Heap Scrounger deck is one of the best ways to lose, because they just sacrifice their Scrap Heap Scrounger, discard their Scrap Heap Scrounger. You can never return a creature from their bin because of Scrap Heap Scrounger. To me, like, the World Championships, all these deck lists just had so many flaws in them, and I was just blown away. Obviously, like, 60% of the room was red-black, but none of the decks were built properly. I don't even know how Owen brought Blue-White Gift. We just saw Shahar get slaughtered in top 4 also. Like, it shouldn't have been close, and it wasn't really close. I hate to sound like I'm better than these players, but, like, come on, guys. Like, this is the Worlds. So many things.
I love it. Hey, these are the best players in the room, but they might not always make the best deck choices. Elliot, did you want to chime in?
Well, when I was watching the top 4, I think I like stopped watching when Shahar was up a game 1, and like I thought he was really far ahead game 2. I thought that was it. And then I come back like maybe 20 minutes later and he's down 2-1 and losing. And I just thought to myself, if the Blue-White Gift deck can lose that game, and if the Blue-White Gift deck can just get slaughtered post-board by this red-black deck, how did he have any business bringing it to the tournament?
Blue-White is not a good matchup for red-black. Like, if you're playing Blue-White and you think it's a good matchup, like red-black is, you're just wrong. And I think a lot of people didn't understand that, Owen and Shahar specifically, and I think Owen and Shahar top 4. But we watched one of his matches. I think Owen's record shows that. The deck is not good. You just die. You either have to have it on turn 4 and they don't have to have the Abrade, or you're dead. And then post board, they bring in 7 discard spells and you lose. And yeah, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good. But like, even Owen during his interviews multiple times, and obviously it is his personality, he's super cocky. He said that this is like the most prepared he's ever been for the tournament. He's a lock to win it. Pen him in on day 1, he said. You know, and he just ends up 5-9, which he probably had at least a buy in there. It's not a good look.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. And I've played that matchup a lot online because people think, oh, Blue-White Gift, you just play 6/6 Angel. How does red-black ever beat this? It's like, okay, I'll just go Beaumont Courier into Scrap Heap into Chain Whirler into kill your Angel or kill your God Pharaoh's Gift, and you're at 4 on turn 4. Like, then they board in this removal plan where they have like Thopter Arrest, Baffling End, and you sort of look at them and you go, okay, how are you ever going to put a God Pharaoh's Gift into play when none of these cards put a God Pharaoh's Gift into play? And my entire deck is full of just discard spells and efficient threats. Like, how are you going to beat this? And then they don't. And so how did you ever think this was a good matchup? It's like, oh, you just naturally did it every turn on turn 4? Wow, that must be really nice. Like, go buy a lottery ticket. Come on. Red-black is just far and away the best deck, and I don't know why people up to this point were not playing it.
I love you, Derek. Keeping it real, and I think you made a lot of good points. So, just I think it just brings me back to a time where I did basically net deck without thinking much, and then after there's some card choices in the sideboard that I didn't like, and then I ended up playing the games and I hated those cards, and I'm like, why did I copy it card for card? So definitely reminds me of those times where even if they're pros, they're not necessarily have tested like every single different matchup, or sometimes they have cards in their sideboard that they just ended up testing maybe a few days, or they just had a good theoretical feel for it. So I can't just assume that they have like the perfect deck list, even though if they're super prepared, there might have been some last minute changes or last minute metagame choices that they had thought. Ultimately, I'm thinking Brian Gottlieb, our old pal, who tweeted out that now that we have a world champ, WotC would be wise to promote the crap out of him, like plaster it, his face everywhere, I guess, promote him. It's an issue that we brought up on First Strike a while ago, when I felt when BBD was champion, no one cared and no one knew. Like no one really knew. And actually, now that I think about it, I think the world champ should just like they should be brought back the next year, just to have the thing that I said was, it's hard to build up personalities in games of where there's enough variance, because you actually want to see someone dominate so that these casual fans can rally behind, whether it be Roger Federer in tennis, like crushing everyone, like any of these sports, they have to come back. So, I'd be all for like a defending champion coming back, so that there's some sort of consistency or some sort of storyline for the casual fan to be able to cheer around. And so Andy, you didn't get to catch much of the event, right?
I did not watch any of it, as I just assumed it was going to be sort of a crapshoot and
boring format.
The boring format, the whole Jerry thing, which I'm sure we'll touch on, and it was also my birthday weekend, so I did other stuff instead.
Yeah, we will talk about the Jerry thing right now. Shout out to P. Sams in the chat. Go ahead, Derek.
I was going to say happy birthday. Happy belated birthday.
Happy birthday, my man. So me and P. Sams, we're here in DreamHack, Montreal. We had dinner with late night dinner with Jerry while watching the UFC, and the conversation came out with Worlds, like, what are you gonna play? I even asked him, was he gonna work with anybody? And he was staying at my place, like, the format's already solved. He doesn't need to work with anyone. And now I know, like at that point, because DreamHack was just 2-3 weeks ago, he had already thought about protesting Worlds. So he was just giving me like these canned answers. So he didn't tell me or P. Sams anything. So when this happened, it was a pure shock, honestly, that he would protest a World. So he ended up, I guess he flew him to Vegas to attend Worlds, and he decided not to play the event. And he tweeted on Twitter on his account, linked to a huge Reddit post about his reasonings for protesting. And a lot of it is stuff that me and him have talked about on this show with you guys, with Brian, certain issues of the Pro Tour. And I'm not going to go through all of it. You should definitely check out his Reddit post. I'll read some of it. So how he describes the current state: Wizards of the Coast does not pay professional players a living wage. This in and of itself is not a requirement. However, if the goal is to sell the dream of playing on the Pro Tour, there should be something in place to make that worth achieving. Between qualifying becoming more and more difficult, especially with the goalposts continually changing and the lack of reward at the top, the message currently being sent is don't waste your time. And then he goes on to talk about what he'd like changed. He has 4 points here. The first one is star build, something that we're all huge proponents of. 2 is hire commentators who can follow the game or familiar with the formats and can provide engaging commentary. Again, an issue we've brought up, and that's why I praise Eduardo as someone who is super experienced at the format that he's commentating on, which is he's definitely different than many of the not all of them. A lot of them, obviously, Cedric. We praise Cedric and P. Sully all the time here. 3, create more Pro Tour invites. And 4, I'd like WotC to value the working relationships they have with partners and various community members. Their actions have indicated that they feel like everyone is replaceable, but that's only true if you don't care about your product and our community being the best it could possibly be. And when he did this, everybody was praising him, thanking him for the sacrifice. Of course, not everyone could be put into the position to sacrifice. I think people calculated that the EV or minimum EV that he would get for this event is about $12,000. So he was giving that up, and there was even a movement among the pro players to compensate him for that. But from what I've heard, that he's declined because that wasn't the point. He's more than willing to do that. Andy, your reaction. Let's go to you. Your first reaction when you heard about this.
All right, so my instant reaction was, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this. What a hero. And then I read his reasoning. It was well thought out. And then I saw that part of the reason he didn't say anything till the day of was so that they couldn't replace him and sweep it under the rug. And I thought that was a very well thought out idea. And I think it served its purpose because everyone's going to ask, why are there 23 players there? And then someone will explain to them why there are 23 players there. Upon talking with people who are much smarter than I am about this kind of thing, they actually thought that he could have done it better. He could have done things better. And I'm sure he'd be the first to admit that he's not going to perfectly know what he should do in this kind of situation. It's sort of like a politics situation. But what they told me is they told me that he thinks the players should unionize and they should do these things sort of together. So it's not just one person doing an act. It's not actually as strong as it would be. Jerry is one of the few people who is such a big name that it is a very strong act, but it could have been so much stronger if all the players a bunch of the players in the event are wearing I don't know, pins on their shirt about Jerry, or they're showing some solidarity. What they really need is the solidarity to show that all the pros are on the same page, because one pro is not nearly as powerful as many pros. And that's why I think that they need to unionize in whatever aspect in order to gain more power and garner more power to combat what WotC is doing to them, similar to what people do when they form unions in a workforce. All the power and all the money is with Wizards of the Coast. And even though they're utilizing these pro players just as a big, large company would utilize workers, they're not getting paid appropriately. They're not getting any help with marketing themselves appropriately. And I think that they need to band together in order to better the circumstances for everyone. And it shouldn't just have to be on Jerry to do a crazy, selfless act like this. And I think if they all banded together and showed some solidarity, aside from we'll throw Jerry some money to compensate him for this, I'm talking be vocal about why you support Jerry and why you're all in this together, and start showing solidarity doesn't even mean necessarily all of you not showing up to events or all of you not doing what Jerry did, but it means making sure that Wizards of the Coast knows that all of you support Jerry's cause, and it'll get it talked about a lot more than just one player not showing up to Worlds. Well, I do think that what he did was very good. I think it could be done better, and I don't think it's on Jerry necessarily to be the only person to do that, but I think some collaboration with other pros and other big names is what needs to happen to actually take Magic's pro player scene to the next step, taken more seriously.
Whoa. Thoughts from the other guys? Any thoughts? Derek, you want to chime in? Elliot? What?
Sorry. No, Andy pretty much hit right on the head. I watched it because I wanted to watch the Worlds to see what the standard decks were, and really look at the draft format for guilds. I wanted to get a little prep for Montreal in. Not great prep, but good to see the cards. I think that Jerry did a good job in a sense, he hit it. And it was very surprising to everyone. I was surprised. I was like, whoa, he's really doing something that I would never expect And for the most part, like, Worlds is a big event. Like, I remember when Patrick Chapin said he won a pro tour so he qualified for Worlds. To me, that's like mind blowing that somebody would give up that opportunity to really make a big statement like this. And it just really shows how much he cares about hitting this home. And it's huge. It's really, really big. I think a lot of people don't really understand what he's doing in a sense. Like, he gave up a lot of equity, like we said, $12,000 ish. And a lot of people think he's just whining, or like they don't understand that Wizards is just sort of like suing their players and basically monetizing their names. I really liked what he did. I thought it was really cool. As for unions, I don't know if that's possible in Magic the Gathering. It's just not something that's really applicable in my mind. I don't know exactly how you would implement something like that. Like, in a workplace, when they started unions, basically people were like, yeah, we don't want to die. In Magic, it's like, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't have put your life into professional Magic the Gathering. And that's it. Like, we live in a pretty heavy capitalist society. I'm not saying that they've made bad choices with their lives. I'm just saying, like, most people will literally just say, go find a better job or something, right? Like, to me, the whole idea of a union is that the employees have no other option, or the employers have no other option. And you build a union. I don't think that would happen. But I could just be terribly wrong. And in a couple of years, we could see professional Magic player unions.
Yeah, so to elaborate sort of and go on what you're talking about is, so I think that WotC does need some of these pros. Admittedly, a lot of the pros, unfortunately, are relatively replaceable because there's a lot of pros, and a lot of them have pretty good personalities and are fun and interesting to watch. But when the biggest of the bigs, and I think Jerry is one of those people, do this kind of thing, WotC does need these people. You see the tokens that they give out in the new packs, they got Jerry's face all over them. Like on the tips and tricks cards, they got other people's face all over them because they are trying to sell the dream, play the game, see the world. That's like one of their things. And I think that the WotC needs them more than they think. And the thing is, what a unionizing would do is the threat of like the other side of it, of them not doing this or choosing not to continue with this venture, is going to monetarily affect WotC. And that's something WotC has to think about. And like, it's a bad look. It's a bad look to a lot of people. There's a lot of people who like would think about the dream or think about that kind of stuff and would think about that's not what they want to pursue anymore. And I know it's just a card game, but it's a card game that a lot of people care a lot about. And I wanted to just talk about how so I really commend what Jerry did, and I don't want to sound like I'm saying what he did was wrong or what he did was bad. What he did was actively good, but when he does it this way, it sort of makes it about him, which I know is not what he wants to do. He doesn't want to make it about him. He's one of the most selfless people I've ever heard speak. But what it does is it kind of does make it about him, and now he's like sort of the hero of the Magic community instead of it being more about the problems of the professional Magic scene. And that's what banding together and all showing solidarity would actually just have a lot of heads meeting the same message instead of all the focus is on sort of Jerry now, which is a lot of responsibility for one guy. Like, he doesn't have to take all this on, and it could be stronger with the solidarity and the union. And it could get built into like the benefits of gold and platinum, right? It doesn't need to be a union in the sense that everyone's used to. It could just be like gold and platinums negotiate for better things, like with maybe the pro committee or whatever they're called will help with that. But like, more benefits need to go with gold and platinum because those are the people that they really want to keep in the game. And maybe it's just platinums. Maybe those are the people that they need the most. And those are the people who should actually pursue it as a living. So maybe up platinum, lower everything else. Yeah, I'm not sure, but that's kind of an idea in itself as well.
I was going to say something. I'm not sure. Oh, yes. I entirely think that the majority of pros, even the big name ones, are very replaceable. And I think that is proven in the fact that we spoke that BBD was the world's champion a couple years ago. And it's just sort of swept under the rug. or everybody's top 8 at a Grand Prix, and it's just sort of swept under the rug. Like even winning a Pro Tour now, like I can tell you who won the past couple Pro Tours, but to me, like the fact that they're adding 6 Pro Tours is really top ending a Pro Tour sort of like loses its appeal. It's still very difficult and very respectable, but I don't think that the average player, and that's the people that we're not making this show for, like the ADH players don't care. They want to see the Professor. They want to see Wedge. If you got rid of those guys, you would have an issue, I think, more if you got rid of a Jerry or if you got rid of an LSB. Maybe LSB is a bad example because he plays both roles, or if you got rid of like an Owen or a Huey, right? Like these guys can step away from the game, and you still have these YouTubers that are making content every single week and reaching out to their fans and are getting flown to these events, not to play in them, but to just be a personality there. To me, those people are a lot bigger, and Wizards of the Coast needs a lot more of those people than your pros. And I think that shows with the fact that they did not promote Worlds. They did not promote last year's winner. They did not talk about how Javier Dominguez lost the finals last year up until he made top 4. To me, that's kind of insane. There's just a huge disconnect, I think, with what Wizards wants of these high-level events and what people think they want, or what the people like us competitive players want. So, yeah.
Did you want to get in there, Elliot?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that kind of to counteract what Andy was saying about how we needed solidarity, or the pros needed solidarity with what Jerry did. I think that the way he did it was actually very smart. You know, he kept it under wraps and only announced it. I think he said he emailed someone from Wizards of the Coast like 40 minutes before the tournament began, and he made his post on Reddit, I don't know, 30 minutes before the tournament began, and that was the first pretty much anyone knew about it. I think that was a big point because that's what created the impact of the movement. The fact that there was one player missing, and you know, there wasn't half the field missing. There wasn't 4 players missing. It just gave it so much more of an impact, and also it didn't put pressure on anyone else. We talked about how he was giving up $12,000 in equity. Can you really, from his perspective, be asking each of the other players in that tournament give up your $12,000? And what does that say about the players that don't give it up? Is wearing a badge that says I support Jerry even enough to show, you know, this is a legitimate cause? Instead, he kind of shell-shocked everyone, including the players, and we got some, I think, pretty amazing takes on Twitter about even, you know, players who were in the tournament saying, you know, I had no idea. Like, we had no idea until someone got the buy, kind of thing. It was just such a shock. It really added to the value of it, and also it didn't put pressure on anyone else, which I think is very important. You're talking about building a union, but union is something usually you can opt into. You know, there's not you're not obligated to do anything if you're not part of the union. And we saw a bunch of the solidarity that you talked about, not in people boycotting the event, which, you know, may be a plus, maybe a negative, but we saw people chiming in on Twitter. We saw people writing articles. Matt Sperling had an article up within like an hour, just completely dissecting it, giving more reach to Jerry's cause. And I think that is what you want in terms of solidarity. That's what you want in people sharing it, sharing their opinions, and not just 4 or 5 people out of a field saying, you know, I believe in this cause. Because what does that say about the remaining people in the field? Do the 19 players who chose to compete in Worlds not agree with Jerry Thompson? And that, I feel that could have cheapened it.
All right, so first of all, almost every union I've ever heard of, everyone has to buy in order to like work at whatever position they are. From my experience, maybe you have a different experience in unions. But so second is, so I don't think it cheapens what Jerry did if he tells all the other competitors he's going to do it, asks if they support what he's going to do, and he doesn't ask them to like cop out of the event. Maybe what they do is they like just some sign of solidarity, anything. Imagine how powerful it would have been if every player had a bracelet that said like not pay the pros, but something along those lines. And Jerry sat out, and Jerry's thing was just like, pay the pros, I'm not playing. and then everyone wore a bracelet that said "Pay the pros," all of them. That is much more powerful. And then on, like, you're still going to get the same takes on Twitter. I don't think anything, like, people's reactions are really going to change too much, like, because it was a lot of people from outside of the world's field. But if Jerry just went up to them and said, "Guys, this is what I'm going to do. I want to help make everything better for all of us. Here's an easy way that you guys could do it. Just show that you're sort of with the cause." And I think a lot of them will be with the cause. And I understand that some of them won't be, and it kind of would look bad on them and it puts pressure on them. But I think that as a world's competitor and someone who's competing at the highest level of Magic and wants to improve the situation for all the professionals, I think it is something that they would support, especially when it could be any simple sign of solidarity. They don't have to sit out of the event. They don't have to give up the equity. Just anything that's like pay the pros and not make it kind of so much about Jerry, but so much about all of them together. And like the Jerry thing would bring a lot more eyeballs to it because there's a missing player and people would ask, why is the player missing? And then you'd be like, wow, all these pros have pay the pros on their wristband or whatever. And you're like, wow, all these pros they're sick of it. All of the pros are sick of it. And that's what they'll start thinking. And then people will think, well, that's more pressure on WotC from my point of view.
Alrighty. Well, lots of good thoughts. Powerful thoughts here. So he ended up, and now he's. I think I just checked that on Channel Fireball. LSV interviewed Jerry, and well, he's always there to respond to people on Twitter. If you have any questions for him, and Andy, do you think what he did will do something though? Do you think this will have a positive impact overall?
I really wanted to, but I do not think so. And it's sad that I feel that way. I think he did a fantastic thing. It's just when you're doing such an enormous act, I think even more planning and even more foresight to try and maybe some talking with other people about it who might know more about that kind of thing than you do. I know I'm relatively uneducated on what the best approach would be, and I talk to people who I think are much smarter than me in this kind of situation, and this is what they told me that they think he should have done, and I trust their opinion. And maybe if there were some people that Jerry confided in who like knew what to do, or knew what to do better, or knew something better, I don't know. I want it to be better because I want it to work, and I'm so afraid that what he did is not going to work, even though his intentions are. He's the purest man we've ever met, and we don't deserve him, but.
Derek? Okay. Purest man we've ever met. Love it. Let's move on from this topic. I do hope that there's something good to come out of it. I think that he did bring up a lot of good points. I just don't see how they're gonna do it. Like he criticized the Silver Showcase that I think a lot of people, the majority of people, agreed was not a great use of resources, and instead could have used that money to better coverage or star build, as he's talked about. But I do, because it's like at some point, even I'm trying to find something that's really similar to this. I always go back to poker because it's the game with the variants where they really tried to push Chris Moneymaker when he won because he qualified online, and then they were hyping him, and the flood, like there was a flood of online poker players once they found out that he won the world champ, the main event, and that he did it through online qualifying. But then subsequently, every other year that someone has won, it's like obviously someone different, and I don't know who's. I know some companies like PokerStars have tried to star build some of them, but there are some that we've never heard of, and I think I'm thinking about when Derek talked about like all these GP winners, Robert Lombardi, he won a GP. Like, does anyone actually care anymore? Robert Anderson, I keep naming my friends, obviously. John Stern has won. I don't know how many anymore. Obviously, Alex Hayne has won. And,
Edgar has won one.
Edgar has won one.
Like everybody. Yeah, I think the moneymaker thing is a good example. I watched a documentary on that, on how they basically built him up from nothing. And then like you wait a couple years and you find out that he has like a huge gambling addiction and he's like also an alcoholic. And they're like, maybe we shouldn't have really showed the world to this guy because he's kind of not what you want in your poker room at all. Like you don't want the government looking at this guy and being like, this is who they want playing poker, right? And just like a real big oversight just because this guy randomly spiked a poker event. It's so wild. But yeah, I love that.
In that, the game of poker doesn't belong to a company. It's not like Magic that belongs to WotC, but they I guess different companies who are like Poker Stars or Full Tilt at the time who had these online poker sites, they had incentive to star build to get people to want to sign up, deposit $20 or whatever and start playing. And it is interesting that I know a lot of poker pros because of them being on TV and all those commercials. Like Daniel Negreanu is probably one of the most famous players, if not the most famous player in the world, along with Phil Hellmuth. To even casual people might even know who they are. And yeah, but of course they had the advantage of being able to push that, being on TV shows like Poker After Dark. At one point, poker was everywhere. Not anymore, but even you're sitting at a sports bar, even these days, you're sitting at a bar, they'll put like, if there's no sports shows on, there's no game currently, it's going to be like a poker game on. And I also think back now to what Andy said about a lot of these platinum pros. A lot of them are replaceable. Like, who cares about some of them? I did want to, before we move on to Guilds of Ravnica, to review the Hall of Fame voting. As expected, everyone expected these two to make it. Seth Manfield and Li Shiqian ended up being the only two to make it to the Hall of Fame. Based on Twitter, if you were reading Twitter, you would know that was the general direction. The majority of voters were going. And Chris Pakula, once again, godfather of Derek Pite, missed it. 40th% again, coming close, and would have. It's always like the kick in the teeth because he would have made it in under the old rules. I was not too surprised to see. I know Jerry was not likely to make it, but I knew that he's someone that would eventually make it, and I did think that there was momentum online. So to see him with 22.18% of the votes, he was sixth behind Manfield, Li Shiqian, Pakula, Herbaholz, Yukihiro, and there you have it, Jerry Thompson, number 6. I think he'll eventually make it. And then followed by Brad Nelson, Margin Liebert, Tomohiro Saito, Carlos Romao, Ikeda, Justin Gary. And that's why after listening to the Pro Points podcast, when Sam Black thought that he and Jerry had similar resumes and he couldn't really understand why people would vote for him, Jerry over him. But me, like for me, it wasn't comparable. It just wasn't comparable to the community side of it and the star power, all the deck building that Jerry's done over the years, all the SCG that he's dominated, that I think really pushed his brand in terms of the casual. There's a lot of casual SCG viewers, and I just felt his star power was way bigger than Sam's. And even if the results are similar, and we see that reflected in the vote. Any surprises for you, Derek, that your godfather couldn't make it?
No. I expected Seth to make it. I expected Li Shiqian to make it. I mean, to me, this year, the ballot seemed pretty boring. I think I read quite a few things like maybe we should reevaluate what the ballot is and what the parameters are to get on, and Magic's getting bigger and older. To me, I just even last year, I wasn't really excited when, Martin Yuza, and who's the other one? I don't even remember. Who got into the Hall of Fame. And like we're like 5 years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, like Owen got in or whatever, right? It was like that was really cool to me. And now it's just like, yeah, whatever, Hall of Fame. People are gonna put really bad opinions on the internet. I get to find out who has really bad opinions. Raptor, that's who it was. Yeah. I just don't care. Don't really care about the Hall of Fame. So not surprising, not interesting to me. Maybe next year will bring more drama.
I don't know, like this is I forget how well Herbert Holtz did in the votes the previous year, but we're getting to a point where his results are clearly ahead of a lot of people that are left because of his 4 PT top 8s and a win. And wouldn't be surprised, depending on how, I'm not sure how strong the people coming in next year to do, like the people that are going to be newly eligible. I don't know. So, but again, no surprise. Congratulations to Seth and congratulations to Li Shixian. And we'll see next year. Let's get down to some guilds of Ravnica, unless you guys think I forgot about anything. If I didn't, Andy, take it away with, let's just go straight with some of our top 5 picks from the new set. What should people be keeping their eyes on as they start cracking packs?
Oh, baby. I was pretty excited to do this. So what we've done is we've all picked in secrecy our top 5 constructed cards from whatever this Ravnica set is. And I don't know what the best way to do this, if we should go one at a time. So I'm just going to say one of my cards. The first card I put on my list is Notion Rain. So that's 1 blue-black, surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. Notion Rain deals 2 damage to you. So it's the new Read the Bones. But it's better. A little harder to cast because you have to play blue, but it is better. Thoughts?
I forgot about that card. It would definitely probably make my list.
Yeah, I knew your list would suck.
Hey, what? That was really rude. Why did you say something like that?
I thought I was muted, my bad.
Oh, what? No, you didn't. That's just a lie. For sake of argument, I think the new Glimmer of Genius is better, but I do think the Notion Rain is good.
Well, to my next card, the new Glimmer of Genius, Chemister's Insight.
Yeah, that's
3 and a blue, draw 2 cards with Jumpstart, which means when it's in your graveyard, you can discard a card from your hand. In addition to paying its cost, exile it and cast it again. So it's sort of a Glimmer of Genius, like a little worse on the front end, but it's got a back end, so that's pretty good. I think this card's very good. I think it's going to be the backbone to control decks, much as Glimmer was, much as Illumination sort of was. Did it make your list, Elliot?
No, and you knew that going into that because Andy and I we compared notes going into this, and after making our lists, I will say, and Andy just yelled at me for almost 10 minutes straight, calling me an idiot because our lists didn't overlap at all. We couldn't not disagree. I think the cards that Andy has on his list are all very good, but just not as good as mine.
I'm really judging your card evaluation right now because the 2 cards we've talked about so far are like going to be like the 4th and 5th most played cards in the format.
All right, so I think the way we're going to do this is I'm going to do all my top 5. We'll discuss it as we go, and then we'll move on to Derek and hopefully never Elliot.
Quick question, Andy. Do you think it's better than Glimmer of Genius?
It's the same power level is sort of how I feel about it. Like Energy Mattered and Scry2's pretty good. I think like being up a card on the back end is like
I don't think it's
maybe worth a bit more or a bit less depending on decks.
I think because the new Glimmer has instant speed and you can play it the same with counter spells. Like one of them is going to go into a mid-range deck and one of them is going to go into a control deck. And I think the instant.
What talk about? This is instant speed.
Read the Bones is instant speed?
Nah, we're talking about Chemist's Insight as the new Glimmer.
Yeah, that card is instant speed, right?
Yeah, we're talking about that versus Glimmer of Genius.
Oh, I thought we were comparing Read the Bones versus Glimmer of Genius.
That's all right. I'll get you caught up.
Okay, thank you. I missed
Thoughts on what's better?
I think Glimmer of Genius is worse.
All right.
Well, I think Glimmer of Genius is much better than this card. I think that most of the time Scrying 2 is worth basically a card, and since you have to discard to Chemist's Insight anyway, you end up almost net even with Glimmer and have to pay half the mana.
Yuck.
But you get more cards.
I look forward to Elliot's list. Okay, continue.
You don't
Fresh
get more
card.
cards.
All right. So the next is I had to pick a token Boros card because I looked at all the Boros cards. I was like, well, I'll just pick one. And I picked Tajik Legion's Edge. It looks like it's the most powerful in aggro decks. It looks like it's going to be the most important card for you to draw in your aggro deck. And boy, oh boy, is that card good. So it's 1 red-white for a 3/2, has haste. Then under that, it has an even more another ability, Mentor. So whenever it attacks, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature with less power. It has another ability. It's prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. And surely that must be it. Nope. Red-white, Tajik gains first strike until end of turn. It has all of that text on it. That's ludicrous.
I guess there's not much disagreement in the ranks.
Well, it's not on Elliot's list.
Okay.
It's not on my list. I don't think that card. Shock is still in the format. I just don't really care about it. Like, it'll get played. It's just not going to be that good. I don't think.
Oh, okay. All right. So my next card is Assassin's Trophy. Very easy. Slam dunk. It couldn't possibly not be in someone's list.
It's not on Elliot's list.
No, it's obviously not on my
Elliot,
list.
man, you got to learn to read. You know what this card does, right?
Yeah, I'm aware of what it does. Like in
was
Legacy
bad,
and
Derek.
Modern.
Like,
we were just. Oh, go ahead.
I have it on 5th in my list, but it was making the list no matter what.
I think that like it'll see play in Standard. I don't know if you can get away with playing 4 copies, and it's like auto 4 of in Legacy and Modern. I don't think the card's bad. I don't know if you can play 4 in Standard, but
Why not?
I mean, you can play 4. Like, you can just do whatever you can play up to 4 in any constructed format. Those are the rules. If you knew how to read, you might know that. I think it's worse than Brass's Contempt, but I think you still want some of them because like those decks can't like if like I said this on a previous cast, but like an aggro deck is not going to play Brass's Contempt, but an aggro deck will play Assassin's Trophy, and I think that's what makes Assassin's Trophy better, if it is better.
That makes sense to me. But I mean, show me a black-green aggro deck. Historically, black-green's like
we're getting an entire set of like another 250 cards, and we're losing like 1,000 cards. Like I don't know anything about the new format. If I knew it, I would love to sell you my ideas and be rich already. But for you just not have it on your list on just raw power level, this card's really good.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad card. Don't get me wrong. But like as you said, you play 4 Vraska's Contempts in your mid-range deck, and you play some number of Assassin's Trophy. Is it 0? No. Is it 2, 3? Probably.
I really want to know what 5 cards in the format are better than this card in Standard in the new set. I want to. I know Andy said we can't listen to your opinion, but I really want to hear it now.
All right. So I just wanted to start by saying you are brain dead. It's like you forgot how good Path to Exile was in Standard. Like, so this is as unconditional as you can get. The first 3 words on the goddamn card are destroy target permanent. That's it.
You can't path a Teferi. Did you know that you can Assassin's Trophy a Teferi?
You can hit anything.
Well, yeah.
Holy crap, I'm getting mad.
Except for Carney T, but he's a good one.
Oh, It's like you guys forgot what unconditional removal does to a mid-range deck. It's so important to just like now you can just play 4 of this for like Vraska's Contempt and play no other removal. Don't have to worry about it. Planeswalkers, you're dead. Creatures, you're dead. And you just play creatures.
Play 8 removal and no other removal. Just
why
play
not?
near the maximum amount of removal and not a bit more.
Oh my god, brain dead. This thing kills anything. Destroy target permanent. It's anything. You can hit a land.
It's like I'm listening to Hooked on Phonics with how much you're repeating yourself. It doesn't make it any better.
All right. So my my 5th card is one that Elliot's probably gonna go at me for. It's a 3-mana counterspell, but it costs 1 blue-red. Ionize.
That card's bad.
That card's not bad, Derek.
That card's real bad. The mana is too good for that card to be played.
Turn that frown upside down, my friend. You're about to get an introduction to your new counterspell. So what we have here is a unconditional counterspell that is very easy to cast. Very easy. It is worse than the other counterspell, the 1 blue surveil 1. It's worse. But it's way easier to cast, and for now, the mana's not going to be that great. I understand Grixis and Jeskai get double Shockland, but you don't have to worry about it when you can just play 1 blue-red. And especially when you look into the fact that there might be like blue-red aggro decks or blue aggro decks that could splash this, like not be very much red, then the 2 damage becomes extremely relevant. And the fact that it can go in either strategy is what could make this card very powerful and perhaps top 5 card in the set.
The fact that everything you just said about that card being good was conditional, and then even more conditional on whether the things that it's conditional on are good, makes that card bad.
Well, the condition is that it counters spells. Well, what are you talking about conditional?
But like if I play a Pelt Collector on turn 1 and you have this stupid counterspell in your hand, would you rather have a counterspell or an Assassin's Trophy? Now, this is where Assassin's Trophy is really good and much better than this bad counterspell. Because the thing about counterspells is once a spell resolves or once a spell gets going, like a Teferi, like you can't counterspell a Teferi once it's in play. So now you have this Assassin's Trophy that does everything, so you don't need these bad blue-red counterspells, and you can just kill your opponent's threats.
You know what, Derek? I've done some thinking, and I was just thinking about all of Magic's history and all of the different 3-mana counters that have always been playable. And you know what?
Bad control players think they're good. You hook a bad control player with one 3-mana. Like nobody plays cancel. Why does nobody play cancel? It's like the exact same card as the other 3-mana counterspells, right? Like disallow is slightly better. Like this card might be slightly better. It might be slightly worse. But like
slightly worse. Get out of here.
It's
holy, go to bed.
No.
It's bedtime.
It's like a rare, right?
Holy moly.
It's really hard to get. You're spending like $4 on this, and there are cancels in the free common box.
Derek, it's your turn. Get me out of here.
All right. First, I have Legion Warboss, the 2/2 for 3 goblin that makes little goblin doorknobs. So not only is that really good in a red deck, but I could also see it being really good in a red-green deck. You go turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2 Legion Warboss, and you just bring the pain. And it's different than what's the other goblin called? The one that makes tokens?
Rabblemaster.
Rabblemaster. It doesn't make all your goblins have to attack each turn. It's only conditional on the turn the token comes into play. So you can play this goblin doorknob that makes other goblin doorknobs and Chain Whirler in the same deck. You don't have to suicide your Chain Whirlers, and you make little tokens every turn. So not only can you like power out this guy if you want to really early, but he also swarms the board. And he's only 1 red mana. He's a 2/2, so he dies to shock, but he's not legendary. So you can just play as many as you want. The card's really, really good, right? Second, I have Chemist's
Well,
Insight.
hold on. You guys slow down here. I have something to say.
All right, well.
So when it's Tajic, it dies to shock, but your card, when it dies to shock, it's no big deal. You just play more.
Yeah, Tajic's legendary.
Okay, so if it lives, who cares if it dies to shock?
Well, if I have this Goblin Doorknob in play, I can just block with little tokens.
Oh my god, you make me sick, dude. It's gonna make all your cards better.
Tajik doesn't even have first strike normally. Like, if I just block it with a Chain Whirler, Tajik dies.
You're right.
Yeah. So, like, what
You don't
card
have
do you
to
want?
attack into Chain Whirlers. Oh, you'd rather send your 1/1s into this Chain Whirler? You'd rather get your 1/1s Chain Whirlered than have a 3/2 that could affect the board, that could get first strike and battle with it, and could give another creature a counter?
It's all just conditional. Like, on pure power level, Tajik is worse than this card.
I would say before I move on, a bit of a spoiler to my list is that Legion Warboss also on mine, and I think that people are just so underrating this card. People slept on Rabble Master when it came out, and this card just is Goblin Rabble Master. This card attacks for 1 damage the turn it comes down, 5 damage the next turn, and then 7 damage the next. That's only 1 less per turn than Rabble Master does. It just ends the game so quickly.
I'm very happy Elliot learned to read in the past 5 minutes because he's finally making sense. Maybe he doesn't understand what Assassin's Trophy does because the picture's a little ugly, but like this War Boss is really good and it's definitely better than Tajik.
Just remember what side of history you're on, Derek.
Oh, I'm ready to eat my words when I am wrong, but I am never wrong. So you can put that in writing. I'm going to go to my second card now. It's Chemister's Insight. That card's good. It's Glimmer of Genius, but twice. My third card is Pelt Collector. I think that is a good lad. And I think that card will be the bane of control decks' existence. I think you're going to have a lot of control decks trying to beat a Pelt Collector and a lot of control decks trying to beat other control decks or mid-range decks with Assassin's Trophy. And they're going to be built so poorly that they can't do both. And Pelt Collector on itself is just a purely powerful card, and I can see it really actually warping a standard format. Am I allowed to go to my fourth card now?
Well, spoiler alert for my list. I also have Pelt Collector because that card's also bonkers.
Yeah,
that card's pretty good. It was pretty close to making my list.
A 5th through 8th very good 1-drop to play alongside Llanowar Where Else is going to just completely push it over the edge, I think.
This is my favorite segment ever. This is one of my favorite segments we've ever done, so we're going to run this back for sure. Go ahead, Derek.
All right, my fourth card is Plague Caster. It's the Fleshbag Marauder, but it also hits Planeswalkers, and if your opponent doesn't have a creature or a Planeswalker in play, they discard a card. So, like, you sacrifice a creature or Planeswalker, they sacrifice a creature or Planeswalker, and if they can't, they discard a card. I think this card is really sweet, and I expect to see it in every black sideboard, or even a couple in the main deck. I think that this card is just really, really good.
Yeah, I do really like this card. My concern is that, like, there's not a lot of things you want to sack with it, so like you're kind of getting this strange to the slaughter edict effect that is like with some upside and some downsides too. But I think overall it's fine. I really love this card. This is what I'm all about. That little bit of advantage you could get, my man. But
oh yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to be playing
Top
this card
20,
if
top 40
you're,
maybe.
I don't know if you want to be playing that card if your main plan is to sacrifice it to itself. I think that's a little pricey for that effect. I think that, if you're playing some weird black aggro deck where you're going to have a dumb idiot to sacrifice that you are okay exchanging for their card, then maybe you can play it, but I don't see this as a top 5 card. It might be a player, but you have to have something else to sacrifice, and that's a pretty high cost, I think.
I mean, like, maybe I should define my top 5 cards. I think each of these cards I've talked about will be consistently played in a standard deck throughout the format, and that standard deck will be competitive or competitively good at some point in the format. Like, I could see this Plague Catcher, whatever it's called, top-8ing a Grand Prix. But I could not see that stupid Is-It counterspell top-8ing a Grand Prix because that card's unplayable. And the people who are casting it probably also can't do combat math. They're like, oh, 2 damage? Good thing you start the game at 20 and not 2. Like, they just don't understand how to attack properly.
You got a bad brain, kid.
I can't think straight. At least I put Assassin's Trophy in my top 5.
Yeah, could you
Just for my
imagine?
5th card.
Could you
it's Assassin's
imagine?
Trophy. Okay, yeah, that's my 5. Top 5.
Okay, so a couple of my top 5 were kind of spoiled. I did have Pelt Collector and Legion Warboss, which we already talked about. The first card that was on my top 5 was Aurelia Exemplar of Justice. I think this card is absolutely bonkers in both the red-white aggro deck that Andy was talking about that plays Tajic. If that exists, I think it's bonkers alongside Legion Warboss. And I think it's especially like insane with Lyra. If you play Aurelia on turn 4 and then Lyra on turn 5, you just get to attack for 5. 5 with lifelink and vigilance. Aurelia, by the way, is a 2/5 flying with Mentor, and it costs 2 red-white. At the beginning of your combat, give target red creature you control +2/+0, and target white creature you control vigilance. And it can target itself with both of them. So its worst possible mode is a 4/5 flying vigilance Mentor, which like that's just such a high bottom side. And then you have the upside. You can give your Lyra vigilance. You can give your red creature that you're trying to kill them with +2/+0. You can give that the red white 2-drop that has double strike +2/+0. All of a sudden you're attacking for 6. It's just all upside. The card is bonkers.
Yeah,
It's too slow. It's very slow.
I had this card in my top 5 over Tajic at first, and then I came to my senses. I slowly realized that this card is not as good as Tajic. But I really like your thing. Like, if I play my 4-mana creature and then my 5-mana creature, and they both live, my opponent will take 5 today. Lifelink. That's a combination.
It's such a huge swing. Like, they can die later, but if they kill the Lyra, then
why die later when you can die now?
We all die later.
But they have to answer both of them. They're both such huge, heavy-hitting threats. If they kill the Aurelia, they have to deal with a Lyra. If they kill the Lyra, they have to deal with an Aurelia. And you're only allowed to play so much removal. You have to be playing a creature at some point.
You're only allowed to play 8.
Creatures
you're
have flying.
8 removals. 8 removals in your deck. No more removals. You better not have more than 8 threats. You'll lose. Oh my god. I can't wait to win Montreal.
The best part is that there's more cards, Derek. He's not done.
There's more? Oh, okay.
The next card on my list is Doom Whisperer, which is 3 black for a 6/6 flying trample that has pay 2 life, surveil 2. I think that of all the cards that should have been auto-included on lists, this is snap number 1. This card's better in standard than Assassin's Trophy. It's not even close. The black decks are going to play 4 of this and 4 Vraska's Contempt and 52 Swamps for all I care, because that's all you need. This card just like effectively draws you a card each time you pay 2 life, with the power of Surveil just finding you the cards you need. If you're behind and it dies, you can dig to the answer that you need to catch back up. If you're ahead or kind of in a stalemate, you can pay a couple, maybe 2-4 life in your upkeep, get exactly what you need to keep going. And Vraska's Contempt just gets you the life back to keep surveilling. This card's bonkers also.
I'll agree. I think this card is good. I think your card evaluation on Surveil, though, is a little off. Because, like, Surveilling 2 is not drawing a card. It's milling 2 cards. And there's no real benefit for you to do that. So, like, you're right. Sometimes it gets you what you want. But you also just can't willy-nilly mill your whole library to hit a card. And, like, or you just make it game actions when this happens. Like, it comes into play. I need to mill my library to hit another one. So if my opponent kills this one, I can mill my library again.
It's the new Squadron Hawk.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not gonna get into evaluating the value of Scry 2 or Surveil 2 with someone who didn't understand the looter problem for a year and a half, okay?
Yeah, but I understand it now. I am learning. I just gave you a bunch of really good information, and you're not learning. So,
Okay, the reason Surveil 2 is worth a card, because Surveilling 2 improves the average quality of your draw that over enough sample sizes is worth just drawing a card. If you Surveil 2 over enough games, you'll have improved your draw step by enough that it's like drawing a card when you replace the land you were going to draw with a spell of substance.
So every time I Surveil, I'll always hit what I want because on average it's going to be great.
No, it's worth approximately drawing a card because if you are looking for a gas spell, and say your deck has 20 cards that you want to draw at this point, you have either 20 removal spells or heavy hitting creatures. It's 1/3 of your deck. You get to
long time watcher, first time commenter. Yeah, I have a question. If I have 4 cards in my hand and I surveil 2, how many cards are in my hand afterwards?
It's not my fault that you don't understand card economics.
Sorry.
You just do it in your upkeep. You do it in your upkeep before you draw a card, and it improves the quality of your draw. Do you not understand that?
Sir, I have a question. If I have 4 cards in my hand and I scry 2, afterwards, how many cards are in my hand?
It's still 4, okay? But
okay. So if I surveil 2 in my upkeep and I have 4 cards in my hand, how many cards do I have in my hand in my upkeep?
Derek, you're not this dumb. Come on.
You're very dumb. You claim to understand the looter problem, but you don't understand how scrying and surveilling, improving the average quality of your draw, is virtual card advantage.
Kale Thompson, KT Money in the chat says, it might approach drawing a card if you're using those graveyard cards somehow. Elliot, why couldn't you think of that?
Look, I think the average viewer of the First Strike podcast is pretty savvy. I think they can understand that when the release notes say the Dimir Surveil mechanic is for graveyard synergies, and this card says Surveil on it, that you can put the two together. But I'm saying you don't even need graveyard synergies for this to be an effective card.
Elliot, let me paint you a picture. So what I've gathered from your top 5 is that you love having your 4 and 5 mana cards living. What if I told you that decks were allowed to play 2 mana unconditional removal spells that kill everything?
They're all creatures too. Like you didn't even think of the Glimmer of Genius. That card actually draws you 2 cards. And
I'm not even done my list. I got another one.
Is it on the list? Is it a creature? Is it a fucking
Not a creature?
Is it Vraska? Please don't tell me it's Vraska.
It's not Vraska. Well, last card, Sinister Sabotage, which you can write this down. Make a note on your calendar behind you, Carr. Sinister Sabotage is the best cancel we've had since Forbid. This card's absolutely nuts. I thought that Dissolve was insane just because you let the control decks smooth out its draws and string everything together. Except now you can Sinister Sabotage your Chemister's Insight in your graveyard. You can Sinister Sabotage all the cards you don't care about and get some additional value along the way. The best cancel since Forbid.
I can't wait for people to put the Sinister Sabotage in their deck, counter the wrong spell, and then mill incorrectly. Because this card is going to be so difficult to play perfectly that it's not going to be a good card. And anybody who puts this card in their deck is just like, on average, going to be making a play mistake. Not to mention that this card's worse than Disallow, I think.
Derek,
did you play Guild Gates instead of Temples? Did you think that
sound like scrying is a downside? I knew.
Is scrying one out of Temple downside because you might make the wrong decision?
Yeah, I think that's a serious thing people should consider. Is like you shouldn't play control decks because you'll make the wrong decision. And I think people thinking that this card is good is gonna provide them to make the wrong decision. Not to mention, like, disallowing a Chandra ultimate was actually a very valid line if you're the control deck in the old format. And one of the best ways to beat a control deck is to have a Planeswalker in play. I think the fact that this card just is really bad against like 1-drops, like Pelt Collector, other random things like that, makes me believe that this card is just not very good. Like I think it's the same as Disallow. Unless you can abuse it. And I don't think you can.
Scrying as a downside is a new low for you, Derek.
Listen, I am never wrong. All right. This card's good. I don't think it's top 5.
It surveils. It's too hard to play. It can't be good.
Look, by the way, Surveil 1, drawing half a card.
Okay, no, it's not.
Drawing half a card. Elliot really likes the unsets. Elliot's favorite format is Uncube, where he gets together with his friends on the weekend and talks about how 6/6s for 5 are just busted. You can try your whole library for 2 life.
I'm loving these lists and the hot takes because give it a few months and we got to revisit all these top fives. I'm super happy that they're different. So
Derek will be drowning in hate mail. Elliot will be so forgotten. He'll never be invited back after this.
Out of like your guys' cards that we didn't agree on, I would say like the majority of them are relatively correct, except for your blue-red counterspell.
Oh.
Everything else is fine. I actually like the 6/6 Demon. I think that's one of the most underrated cards in the set. I think a lot of people are sleeping on it. I think it would be my 6th. It's not very obvious and it's pretty good.
Wow. Should have done this segment more, but maybe it's just this set. Maybe it's just this September set that's always got some fire in it. Loving the segment. And Derek, I forgot to bring up our boy Travis Sowers when we're talking about Ben Stark keeping one-landers. Probably like Travis Sowers probably coached him.
Yeah, like what are you doing? Stop keeping one-landers, man.
Have you played Mono Red? Would you say that you wouldn't keep one-landers even with that deck? I know it's like contextual. You might.
Like it's hard to say because obviously if Ben's deck is very tiered to like play a one-land deck. The problem is if you miss on your second land by turn 3, which is sort of the threshold where I'm like, can I still win this game against a deck like Black-Red? I just can't do it. That deck has so many X1s, and you already get blown out by Chain Whirler, and their threats are already more powerful than yours. So if you can't cast your spells by turn 3, and your opponent's curving you out, you're never winning. So like, how many one-landers can you really keep, right? Like I would keep a one-lander on the 6 on the scry, or I would keep a one-lander on 7 on the draw. But I would probably never keep one-lander on the play, because if you miss that second land, you're just never winning.
What does it top out at with some amount of Hazard in the main?
Yeah, I think it was 3 Hazard in the main, but like you also, I think he had Earthshaker Tender, right? So he had like 6 mana. He could do things with 6 mana, but the majority of the deck like is meant to build on like 1 mana, right? Like you have the wizards, you have your Wizard's Lightning, and then you have like your shocks, and then from you go like Lightning Strike, Earthshaker Kenra, and then Chain Whirler at 3. What by the time you hit 4 mana, you should have no cards in hand when you're casting Hazoret. But if you're just keeping one-landers, I don't know what's going on there.
All right. So let's just wrap up the show. I don't know with this talk of Jerry protesting. There's always the horizon of the upcoming games, and people are already hyped about Artifact and planning to work together. Or someone even approached me to ask me advice on how to build an Artifact content site. So people are that hyped about it. And there's all these other games. And I remember, I think the first, maybe you guys were following it, but the first championship for Soulforge or something was, I think there was a big cash prize for it, for some of these tournaments. And then they all eventually faded. I know that the upcoming championship, because of Jerry, for Shadowverse, the first place prize is going to be like, there's $1 million. There's over $1 million prize pool. Of course, hard to know and say how long these games will last. Usually they tend to have this big starting this huge tournament just to promote people to play the game, and I guess they give up on it once they see like not enough people are playing or something, and move on. So exciting times to see what the future of esports and Magic the Gathering brings us. So which one of you guys are playing pre-releases? Nope, nobody.
I'm playing on Magic Online. I'll play probably a bunch.
Yeah, I'll probably.
A bunch of Magic Online.
I'm gonna draft a bit. Yeah.
Online?
Oh, definitely online. Yeah.
I've been requested to go to the face-to-face pre-release, so maybe I'll see their car.
By who?
Someone I work with told me to come check it out. So
why?
I
Because they're a great store, Car. They're our sponsor.
Yeah, I might drive up there myself. I don't think the hike's that far. Just stay an extra week. Yeah. Face-to-face games for all your pre-release needs.
Yeah, speaking of face-to-face, okay, I'll do a secret giveaway for people who have listeners or watchers who have made it this far. I won't write about the giveaway outside of this, but I'll say it here. You're going to get a chance to win some face-to-face game store credit from yours truly. List in the YouTube comments your top 5, and make sure to give this video a thumbs up, a like, subscribe to the channel. You won't have to do that. Actually, no, I'll make that a requirement. You'll have to do that to enter the contest. I'll check once I pick one of the comments randomly. But list your top 5 for constructed top 5 and see. Hopefully they're different from the list from these 3, and I'll just pick a winner. So for Andy, Elliot, and Derek, and myself, we're going to see you next week right after the pre-release, after these guys have played some online and maybe real life, and we'll break it all down before GP Montreal. See you next time, guys.